have the best of it. If they elect an idiot, he will not live forever, and it is impossible for us to get rid of the barbarisms in our book. The Catholics said, "We will not let the common people read the Bible." That was right. If it is necessary to believe it in order to get to heaven, no man should run the risk of reading it. To allow a man to read the Bible on such conditions is to set a trap for his soul. The right way is never to open it, and when you get to the day of judgment and they ask you if you believe it, say, "Yes, I have never read it." The Protestant gives the book to a poor man and says, "Read it. You are at liberty to read it." Well, suppose I don't believe it when I get through? Then you will be damned. No man should be allowed to read it on those conditions. And yet Protestants have done that infinitely cruel thing. If I thought it was necessary to believe it, I would say never read another line in it, but just believe it and stick to it. And yet these people really think that there is something miraculous about the book. They regard it as a fetish, a kind of amulet, a something charmed that will keep off evil spirits or bad luck, stop bullets, and do 1,000 handy things for the preservation of life. I heard a story upon that subject. You know that thousands of them are printed in the Sunday school book. Here is one they don't print. There was a poor man who had belonged to the church, but he got cold, and he rather neglected it, and he had bad luck in his business, and he went down and down and down until he hadn't a dollar, not a thing to eat. And his wife said to him, "John, this comes of you having abandoned the church. This comes of your having done away with family worship. Now, I beg of you, let's go back." Well, John said it wouldn't do any harm to try, so he took down the Bible, blew the dust off it, read a little from a chapter, and had family worship. As he was putting it up, he opened it again, and there was a $10 bill between the leaves. He rushed out to the butcher's and bought meat, to the grocer's and bought tea and bread and butter and eggs, and rushed back home and got them cooked, and the house was filled with the perfume of food. And he sat down at the table, tears in every eye and a smile on every face. She said, "What did I tell you?" Just then there was a knock on the door, and in came a constable, who arrested him for passing a $10 counterfeit bill. They tell me that I ought not to attack the Bible, that I have misrepresented it, and among other things that I have said that, according to the Bible, the world was made of nothing. Well, what was it made of? They say God created everything, consequently there must have been nothing when he commenced. If he didn't make it of nothing, what did he make it of? Where there was nothing, he made something. Yes, out of what? I don't know. This doctor of divinity, and I should think such a divinity would need a doctor, says that God made the universe out of his omnipotence. Why not out of his omniscience or his omnipresence? Omnipotence is not a raw material. It is the something to work raw material with. Omnipotence is simply all powerful, and what good would strength do with nothing? The weakest man ever born could lift as much nothing as God, and he could do as much with it after he got it lifted. And yet a doctor of divinity tells me that this world was made of omnipotence. And right here, let me say, I find even in the mind of the clergyman the seeds of infidelity. He is trying to explain things. This is a bad symptom. The greater the miracle, the greater the reward for believing it. God cannot afford to reward a man for believing anything reasonable. Why, even the scribes and Pharisees would believe a reasonable thing. Do you suppose God is to crown you with eternal joy and give you a musical instrument for believing something where the evidence is clear? No, sir. The larger the miracle, the more grace. And let me advise the ministers of Chicago and of this country never to explain a miracle. It cannot be explained. If you succeed in explaining it, the miracle is gone. If you fail, you are gone. My advice to the clergy is, use assertion. Just say, "It is so." And the larger the miracle, the greater the glory reaped by the eternal. And yet this man is trying to explain, pretending that he had some raw material of some kind on hand. And then I objected to the fact that he didn't make the sun until the fourth day, and that consequently the grass could not have grown, could not have thrown its mantle of green over the shoulders of the hill, and that the trees would not blossom and cast their shade upon the sod without some sunshine. And what does this man say? Why, that the rocks, when they crystallized, emitted light, even enough to raise a crop by. And he says vegetation might have depended on the glare of volcanoes in the moon. What do you think would be the fate of agriculture depending on the glare of volcanoes in the moon? Then he says the aurora borealis. Why, you couldn't raise cucumbers by the aurora borealis. And he says liquid rivers of molten granite. I would like to have a farm on that stream. He guesses everything of the kind except lightning bugs and foxfire. Now think of that explanation in the last half of the 19th century by a minister. The truth is, the gentleman who wrote the account knew nothing of astronomy, knew as little as the modern preacher does, just about the same. And if they don't know more about the next world than they do about this, it is hardly worthwhile talking with them on the subject. There was a time, you know, when the minister was the educated man in the country, and when, if you wanted to know anything, you asked him. Now you do if you don't. So I find this man expounding the flood, and he says it was not very wet. He begins to doubt whether God had water enough to cover the whole earth. Why not stand by his book? He says that some of the animals got into the ark to keep out of the wet. I believe that is the way the Democrats got to the polls last Tuesday. Another divine says that God would have drowned them all, but it was purely for the sake of economy that he saved any of them. Just think of that! According to this Christian religion, all the people in the world were totally depraved through the fall, and God found he could not do anything with them, so he drowned them. Now, if God wanted to get up a flood big enough to drown sin, why did he not get up a flood big enough to drown the snake? That was his mistake. Now, these people say that if Jonah had walked rapidly up and down the whale's belly, he would have avoided the action of its gastric juice. Imagine Jonah sitting in the whale's mouth, on the back of a molar tooth. And yet this doctor of divinity would have us believe that the infinite God of the universe was sitting under his gourd and made the worm that was at the root of Jonah's vine. Great business. David is said to have been a man after God's own heart, and if you will read the 28th chapter of Chronicles, you will find that David died full of years and honors. So I find in the great book of prophecy concerning Solomon, "He shall reign in peace and quietness. He shall be my son, and I shall be his father, and I will preserve his kingdom." Was that true? It won't do. But they say God couldn't do away with slavery suddenly, nor with polygamy all at once; that he had to do it gradually; that if he had told this man you mustn't have slaves, and one man that he must have one wife, and one wife that she must have one husband, he would have lost the control over them, notwithstanding all the miraculous power. Is it not wonderful that, when they did all these miracles, nobody paid any attention to them? Isn't it wonderful?